Hey everybody, this is TJR, and if this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. If not, welcome back. This weekend is a very special weekend. It's Rolling Stones in Mono weekend, and that means that all over the world, YouTubers are going to be celebrating by posting their unboxing videos of the re-release of the Rolling Stones in Mono box set on colored vinyl. Everybody except me, of course. But that doesn't mean I can't make a Rolling Stones video. Today, I am going to discuss the 4 albums from the Rolling Stones catalog that I have never heard. And since I like to do comparisons and get needlessly in-depth, I am going to do some needlessly in-depth Beatles and Stones comparisons as well. But before we get to all the fun and games, don't forget that making videos takes time and effort. So please show your support by hitting like, hitting subscribe, and the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. Sorry, my biker neighbors are making a lot of noise. And if you're feeling particularly sorry for me, you can also hit the super thanks button, or consider becoming a patron supporter and get exclusive access to exclusive weekly videos that are not available here on the channel. Okay, let's get to the fun and games. When it comes to the Beatles versus Stones argument, there is one point that I don't think that anyone here will disagree with. Listening to the entire Beatles studio catalog is a much easier task than listening to the entire Rolling Stones studio catalog. That and the fact that this does have to be the scariest Rolling Stones picture you've ever seen. Since standardizing their catalog in the 80s, the Beatles catalog is 13 albums and the Past Masters compilation. And consider that of those 13 albums, one of them, Yellow Submarine, only features 4 new original songs, with the rest being previously released material and highlights from George Martin's film score. Add on the 33 tracks that make up the Past Masters compilation, and you have now listened to the entire Beatles studio recorded catalog. This includes 45s, B-sides, and alternate versions of the album tracks that were also included on 45. This, of course, is not counting the reunion tracks from the anthology series, live tracks, demos, session tracks, remixes, greatest hits compilations, and Let It Be Naked. All of these were released after the band broke up. And although it may break the rule, I'm still going to recommend that you include Let It Be Naked. Now, the Rolling Stones studio discography is another thing entirely, though. The Rolling Stones studio catalog does not get standardized until the release of their 8th album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Now, prior to that, it all gets a little bit sketchy. And like the early Beatles catalog, there are differences and similarities between the US and UK albums. From 65 to 67, we have the US and UK versions of Out of Our Heads, Aftermath, and Between the Buttons. Albums that share the same name, but not the same track listing, and sometimes not even the same cover art. We also have albums with completely different names coming out of the US and the UK as well. The Rolling Stones' self-titled UK debut and the US version entitled England's Newest Hitmakers are almost the same, except for one track. 12 by 5, The Rolling Stones Now, and December's Children and Everybody's were strictly US releases, whereas the Rolling Stones No. 2 is strictly a UK release. During this early period, and leading up to Their Satanic Majesty's Request, there is a lot of duplication of tracks on these various albums. Luckily, though, the 14 studio albums included in the Rolling Stones in Mono set, along with the Stray Cats compilation of 45s and B-sides, etc., which I have on CD, by the way, does allow you to hear, in mono at least, the entirety of that early catalog, up to Let It Bleed. And by this time, the catalog is now standardized, making it much easier to find and hear the rest. Now, omitted from this set is the American version of the band's debut album that I mentioned earlier, England's Newest Hitmakers, because there is a difference of only one track between the two, and that one track is included on the Stray Cats disc. Also omitted is the American version of Between the Buttons, which replaces 2 tracks with the singles Let's Spend the Night Together and Ruby Tuesday, both of which also appear on the compilation Flowers, that is, of course, included in the set. Now, there is one other very important difference that makes listening to the entire Stones catalog, and that's the fact that the Beatles' last released album as a band was Let It Be in 1970. The Rolling Stones' last released studio album was Blue and Lonesome from 2016, with a new and perhaps final album still in production. And if so, we all got a taste of that with the premiere of Living in a Ghost Town in 2019. At present, though, and again, this is not counting any compilations, live albums, and early UK EPs that got absorbed into the US releases, there are 30 studio albums that prior to 1967's Satanic Majesty's Request do have some duplication of tracks. So all in all, listening to the Rolling Stones' entire studio recorded catalog is a much bigger task. Now, getting back to the Beatles-Stones comparison, I began to consume the Beatles studio catalog very early in my musical life. But for a long time, the Rolling Stones were a greatest hits band for me. With the exception of one album, Let It Bleed, I was content to just own a greatest hits compilation. That is until I read the book, Old Gods Almost Dead, by Stephen Davis. Reading this book made me no longer content to just listen to the hits. And as of this date, I have listened to and now own every single Rolling Stones album, save for 4. And these are the 4 Rolling Stones albums that I've never heard. From 1980, Emotional Rescue. Released 2 years after Some Girls, this album features the hit singles Emotional Rescue and She's So Cold. Now, I can remember when these 2 tracks hit radio, and I have to admit that neither of them did very little to inspire me to want to hear the albums that spawned them. Next, we have 1983's Undercover. This album was released after Tattoo You. This album featured the hits Undercover of the Night and She Was Hot. I understand that tensions between the band members were pretty high when this album was recorded. The album received very negative reviews and was considered one of their weaker efforts. And apparently, even Mick Jagger himself has echoed this opinion. Next is Dirty Work, released in 1986. This was the follow-up to Undercover. In his book, Life, Keith Richards stated that the relationship between him and Mick Jagger had really soured at this point. There was no supporting tour for this album because the animosity between the band's members were so high that they couldn't work together anymore. Just like Undercover, Dirty Work received very mixed to negative reviews. This album did feature the hit single One Hit to the Body, which at the time of release did little to entice me to hear the rest of the album. Next we have Voodoo Lounge, released in 1994. This album was a follow-up to 1989's Steel Wheels, an album that I didn't expect to like, but surprisingly did. I should talk about it someday. Voodoo Lounge did decent business as far as record sales, and the song Love Is Strong did reach number 14 on the UK charts, but produced no US top 40 hits. It was also the first album without founding member and bassist Bill Wyman, who left the band in 1991. I remember when Love Is Strong hit the radio and I thought it was okay. There was a second radio track entitled You Got Me Rocking, which honestly I thought just sounded very tired. Next we have Bridges to Babylon from 1997. This album did manage to conjure the worldwide hit single, Anybody Seen My Baby? But beyond that, I've heard nothing from this album. By the way, the track I just mentioned is the one that the Rolling Stones made the move to share songwriting credit with Katie Lang and her co-writer Ben Mink after Keith Richards' daughter noticed the similarities between it and Katie Lang's track Constant Craving. So those are the 4 Rolling Stones albums that I've never heard. I want to ask, have you heard them? And are they worth listening to? How do they stack up to the other albums? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. You know, in spite of how poorly some of these albums were received, I want to be able to say that I have heard the entire Rolling Stones studio catalog. I also want to put the word out there and ask, is there anything that I've missed? Are there any B-sides not available on any of their studio albums or the Stray Cats compilation that are not live tracks or extended dance mixes or just remixes of previous studio album cuts? I do know about the Blues and have heard it on YouTube, but is there anything else? Again, thank you for any information you want to share with me. So there you have it. Those are the 4 Stones albums that I have yet to hear. Let's hope that I never decide to take on the entire Neil Young catalog. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you making it here to the end of the video. If you got the Rolling Stones in Mono box set reissue, God bless you. I hope you're enjoying it. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.